Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating in this information session. I'm Rachel Levinson. I'm with Arizona State University's Washington, D.C. office, and I'm presenting this in order to encourage people to submit proposals for the American Association for the Advancement of Science annual meeting coming up February 11th to 14th, 2021, which will be in Phoenix. So obviously we're hoping for a very strong presence from the university. And this information session is designed to help you make sure that your proposal for a scientific symposium is as successful as possible. The presentation today will be in two parts. We're going to go through a slide set that was sent by AAAS very helpfully, running through the criteria and the suggestions that they make in order to develop a good proposal that covers the information that they're particularly interested in and in the format that they require for submission. And then I'll also talk a little bit further to go through reiterate some of the points that they make, but also go through some of the review criteria that some of us have participated in as reviewers for symposium proposals. So starting here, this is, you'll see very nicely, a picture of the lanyards that every registrant gets when they come to the meeting. We are on these, Arizona State University, very prominently because we were a sponsor of the lanyards for this year's meeting. It was held in Seattle and just recently closed in February.
So UW wasn't on that the year before, for instance.
Correct.
We paid the honorific there. That was money in exchange for goods and services.
That's exactly right.
Great. Okay.
So much of the information that we're going to talk about is going to be, you will find it easily on the AAAS website on directions for submissions. As I mentioned, we're going to go over a few extra points, and we will be holding a review of proposals for those who are interested in it if you submit by a much earlier date. So the deadline for proposals to AAAS is April 16th by 11:59 Eastern time. But obviously getting them in earlier is to us internally for a review, I think will be beneficial.
Who's doing that?
People who are experienced in looking at proposals for this particular purpose.
Do you have a panel?
We will see what we get as a response to determine that.
Perhaps the limited submissions chair would be a
I don't see it.
LJ, the clicker is not advancing now.
hang on.
Someone remotely has taken control.
Can't trust those people in engineering. That's all I have to say.
They have the ultimate power. There we go. Okay, great. Whoops. Okay, so there's the information about deadlines. So one of the most important criteria for review of proposals is that it in some way be relevant to the theme of that particular meeting. The theme of the meeting is always going to be somewhat broad and vague because the AAAS, as many of you already know, is an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary organization. It is not like one of your customary professional societies focusing on a specific discipline, but covers the entire spectrum of science, technology, and engineering. So that's challenging, but also interesting from the perspective of those putting together proposals. So the theme for the 2021 meeting, Understanding Dynamic Ecosystems, is intended to be very broad and inclusive. And the word ecosystem, even taken alone, in this case, really can be interpreted as systems generally. But what they are looking for in terms of relevance is something that is has excellence in the science that it's presenting, and looking for ways to put together different disciplines to address the challenges that they identify in their description on the website. So they're talking about challenges, as it says, facing contemporary society. I'm not going to read everything on these, but I just want to make you aware of the fact that that is one of the criteria that will be looked at reviewing and rating the proposals. So to try and give more information, they list a number of topics, research topics, to explain how broad it is and how it covers the different, putting together a proposal that is in itself interdisciplinary, so one way to address their specific topic. There is discussion about how people kind of twist themselves in order to be relevant to the theme to think about, but it's not limited to the theme of the meeting.
What was this year's theme?
This year's Envisioning Earth's Future. So another one that explains how broad and vague it is.
I did something on science policy, scientific integrity in it.
It was successful.
Right.
And it's very
And that would have been a
competitive.
better theme for us here.
So that is actually something I recommend, is
Yeah.
to look at the program from this year's meeting and past meetings if you want to get a kind of a perspective of how people interpret the theme, how broadly they interpret the theme, and how they may diverge from the theme. So later on, I'll talk about sort of the review criteria and words that are used to describe a particular symposium being proposed. So these are the looking for, you'll see the word diverse, diversity mentioned several times, multidisciplinary several times. That's something to keep in mind, again, when you look at previous programs and see how it was addressed in other topics. So there are tracks by discipline, but even within that, you'll see something most frequently that is multi. So keeping in mind that it's a very multidisciplinary meeting in many respects, they want to make sure the topics are one to a very, very broad audience. It's an international meeting. If you look at the exhibition hall, you'll see often the biggest booths are from other countries. People come from all over because it's a good way to get a sense of how science is being done in the United States, and making contacts, collaborations, things like that that are useful for the future. So think about that also in terms of your proposal. So I'm going to go through very quickly an evaluation and an analysis of the people who registered at the meeting to try and get a sense of what their audience is. I don't think you need to think about that. I'm going to go through that, just skim through it. This is important, I think, to see which disciplines are represented in what proportion. The biggest block there that you'll see on the left is, this is by section at AAAS. There are 24 sections. The sections have disciplinary names. It is proposed that these will change in the future. I think that's talked about in the board, likely to happen, but because you'll see that none of them are really as transdisciplinary as the organization has become. But the largest sector there is societal implications of science, at that particular section, business meeting, it was heavily dominated by Arizona State University, including 2 people in this room, 3 people in this room.
You count.
We had 7 or 9 people from ASU at that meeting. So the section's membership is done by designation when you become a AAAS. And I do want to encourage people to become members if you have not already. It's not required to submit a proposal, but it is, I think, beneficial. And they are particularly emphasizing at AAAS the importance of getting younger and more junior faculty to become members. The reason why it's important for you, if you're organizing a symposium, is that each section has the opportunity to sponsor different scientific symposia. And that can be really important on a practical level, because sponsorship can include travel support for speakers. And they typically, each section typically designates only one symposium that they sponsor because of the small budgets they have for this purpose. But the membership of each section determines the amount of money they get from AAAS for functions such as travel. So when you develop a proposal, you should include the top 3 sections that you think represent the information that you're going to present. And I will talk later about the importance of the section designation, but I just want to show you here what those disciplines are. And in fact, in some cases, you're going to be competing against other proposals that designate certain sections. So just keep that in mind. Media representation is very important to AAAS. They like it to be newsworthy, and that's another review criterion that you should think about.
And we had one of our faculty still on the media circuit after his thing at AAAS, including a CNN thing that's about to happen. So it does pick up.
That's really important. And you'll see there are interviews that are going on after every single section, every single symposium out in the hallway. It's not just reported in Science. The Washington Post has a reporter there. The New York Times has reporters there. Wall Street Journal, they are around and they are grabbing people before and after their sections for interviews. It is generally considered a highly newsworthy event. So that is something to keep in mind. Again, newsworthiness is one of the evaluation criteria also. So they're not expecting, because it's not, again, a single discipline meeting, but so they're not expecting you to announce new research results, but they do want interesting ways of presenting research results and tying it together with the impact to society of those particular research efforts.
For instance, this guy's work is around digital afterlife. What happens to your digital footprint after you die?
It's perfect, because I sometimes go there as a...
Yes, good. So giving your perspective. Maybe we'll ask you to review proposals for newsworthiness. Okay, so let's go pretty quickly through these. So getting to the format of the sessions. Again, this is very clearly laid out on the website, but let's just talk about it very briefly. The organizer, and I'm talking to you as potential organizers here, you have the responsibility for putting together the synopsis that is going to head up the proposal that goes to AAAS. And you use that in contacting people that you think will be good panelists, good speakers on your session. The organizer may or may not be the moderator. The possible format for the sessions can be customized. You can be the moderator. You can designate a moderator that you think is good for that. The moderator will just take a few minutes to introduce the topic at the very top of the session, and then introduce the speakers. 3 panelists, they want those people to be, again, interdisciplinary. You may not have all the panelists from the same institution. So even though it's convenient to have your colleagues from ASU as the speakers, and it's good because you know they're physically present, you may not have everyone from the same institution. So be careful about that. And it is, I think, very helpful to have a discussant, but not necessary in terms of the format of your particular proposal. But you must leave sufficient time for there to be discussion. And often the discussion is very substantive, active, may drag on past the 90-minute time that they give you. But really, for AAAS, the people who come to those sessions are very interactive. They are very interested in having further discussion. It really is a back and forth kind of an event. So make sure that you're going to leave at least 20 minutes or a half an hour for the discussion. And Ira, on your panel, do you want to say something about how that particularly went this time?
Well, we had one of each. So we had an organizer, a moderator, 3 panelists, and a discussant. So I think that's the maximum number of people you can cram onto the agenda. I had the unpleasant role of being the discussant, which is a sort of fear-inducing thing where you listen to 60 minutes of presentation and try to put a bow around it. But
See you later.
You know, having a moderator matters, I think, because that's what kept us to be able to have a time for questions. Because this guy was good; he kept everything tight.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah. But there's absolutely no reason that the organizer couldn't be the moderator as well.
Right.
That makes more sense.
That's right. That's absolutely right. But really, just reiterating the role of the organizer. The organizer also, I'm going to say this multiple times because it's really important. The organizer is the person who is going to go and get panelists to commit. And if the proposal includes people who are invited but not committed, that is not considered incomplete strictly, but in terms of review and evaluation of the proposal, given that reviewers are looking at proposals that are similar in similar topic areas, if they see one that has invited speakers or even one invited speaker versus another one that has all committed speakers, they're going to rate the one with committed speakers more highly. So that's the most time-consuming element of putting together a proposal, is getting committed speakers. So that is something you really have to think of right from the beginning. Write your synopsis. You're going to use that in terms of inviting people to be panelists. And then think about the one sentence, one or two sentences that will describe each of the different speakers on your panel, what they are going to present. They can, of course, contribute that, but it should tie together to your synopsis. And if you're doing one that focuses on the theme of the meeting and is relevant to the theme of the meeting, they all should tie together to explain why you have three different speakers that are going to address this particular topic. And the title of your proposal should also kind of be a nice wrap up of why you think this is relevant and interesting to a AAAS audience, if there is a typical AAAS audience. Oh, so newsworthy. This is really something you want to focus on and look at because there are elements of this that would rule you out as well as rule you in. You are not, if AAAS initially sees that what you're doing is promoting a particular project because you're looking for funding, you're looking for support in some way, that is not what they're looking for. They are not, they feel that would be a conflict of interest. They are very, very sensitive to that. They'll just see that it is non-responsive. They do want, even though we're talking about a meeting that's going to take place in a year, they want ones that are topical. So but think about it in terms of hopefully the coronavirus epidemic, outbreak, pandemic,
less
perhaps,
topical.
will be under control by then. But it is certainly still going to be on people's minds. What are the kinds of policy issues, scientific issues, challenges that are posed by that, and how society views it? Those are going to be of interest. That is going to be considered topical next year, very, very much. It's not going to be all wrapped up by then. And it's a great example of understanding dynamic ecosystems. It is so ripe for all the different kinds of analyses of what did we do right, what did we do wrong, what do we need to be doing now, what should we have done 15 years ago, why don't we have a vaccine? The commercial aspects of it, of how do we interact with the pharmaceutical industry, with other governments globally. I mean, it's full of opportunities for post-mortem, we hope, next year. So think about that, and maybe things that sort of the ripple effect of technology, what technology could have done or didn't do, or how it was not used appropriately or could have been used better. Those kinds of applications, I think, they're going to find very important. And it would still be newsworthy then, I think, but think about how you make sure that is the case. So diversity, I mentioned before, AAAS is really interested in getting a younger membership. They put age in before, it doesn't say it here, which I think is interesting, but it does say career stage. They want people who are perhaps thinking about career changes, they're still thinking ahead of how their career is going to develop. And I think there's an interesting aspect of interdisciplinarity that AAAS is paying attention to that also comes to bear on the diversity issue. One of the examples they gave that they'd like to hear about are what are the problems that you faced in your career? How did you address those? The National Science Foundation just had a 70th birthday celebration, if you will. And one of the panels was about what were the big failures that you faced in your career and how did you get over them? This is from people who are now considered to be very successful, but they wanted to hear, when did you almost give up? So those kinds of stories are also kind of interesting in terms of challenges in career paths that AAAS is also interested in hearing about. But your proposal must have this diversity, and it is rated in terms of diversity of representation, in terms of your panel and your all of your speakers and the makeup of your group. I think I've really talked about.
But also think about non-academics.
Yes.
I think I was the only academic on my panel. I mean, I guess Altec is sort of an academic these days, but well, it was NGOs,
yeah.
museum people. So, you know, that is a diversity that I think is important as well.
That's right.
Because that draws different types of audiences in.
Okay. So the question is can everybody see it online? They want to know if there could be, if there's a minimum of 3 people on the panel. There are only a limit of 3 people who are speakers, panelists on the symposium. So you can have a moderator, a discussant, and 3 speakers, but no more than that. You don't have to have a discussant or a moderator. It doesn't mean you can add another speaker. I hope that's clear. Yes.
You're saying you have to have 5
No,
total?
you do not have to have 5 total. The organizer can be the moderator and the discussant. The organizer doesn't have to speak at all. They can have a moderator that they pick, as long as also that person is committed. Same thing as the speakers. Everybody that you're proposing having a role has to be committed. So policy discussions, and Ira just gave an example where there are, it may be a whole panel that is related to policy development. It has to be policy development that's related to science, technology, and or engineering. If you are going to have a policy discussion, there must be a panelist who has experience at the policy level. This is not just people who are outsiders to policy development. You have to have someone who speaks with authority about policy. And you can also have other people who are interested in and are developing maybe at their institution policy. There should be someone, if you're going to talk about especially a national policy development process, there has to be someone who is with how that actually works. It can't be someone who just studies it from an academic level. Apologize for being adamant about that, but I think it's really important. So this is getting into the discussion of what makes a successful panel submission. We talked a bit about some of these, so I'm going to go quickly through it. But I like the 3rd bullet point about topics from which dynamic discussions can develop, because I think those are really interesting when you probe further in the question and answer period. And the question and answer, leave enough time expecting that when someone in the audience asks a question, everyone on your panel might wish to address, an answer to it. So even if the question is directed at one specific person, it may go further than that. So make sure you allow enough time. So this is the end of the AAAS slide deck. We thank them, give you another view that we'll leave up of the beautiful lanyards. And what I want to talk about is what AAAS is looking for and has instructed the reviewers for these submissions to look for. So I mentioned before, adherence to the meeting theme. It is not absolute that you have to relate to that. If you do, it shouldn't look like a false contortion as much as possible. But I think, again, the theme is so broad that I don't think it would be difficult. But if you're talking about something that is narrower and you don't think it fits well, don't twist yourself in knots trying to get to that. And what they say is really that excellence is a more important factor than adherence to the theme. Proposal, and what they say specifically, and I'm quoting, is proposals not directly related to the theme will be considered if they involve groundbreaking areas of research, new and exciting developments, or new angles for approaching a topic, or cross-cutting activities in support of science, technology, and education. So I think that is important, that kind of overarching guidance, and you should make sure that you're following that. So the quality of the proposal is addressed initially by the synopsis and the title. So the synopsis that you're writing is as it would appear in the program. So look at the program from previous meetings to see how that is picked up. And the title should be something that's catchy and includes keywords, because the keywords are going to be used to determine what track it's in. And some people just develop their personal program from looking at the titles. So, and looking at the different tracks. So make sure that you have considered that. They have a really nice app for developing your personal program. It gets better every year. And if you look at mine, I have conflict after conflict. I have 3 or 4 sessions at the same time. I'm not sure what I'm going to go to. So it has a way to flag the one that you really want to go to. And then if you get there and you go, it's not that great, you know which is your second choice. But it is really important that you just think about that in developing your titles. The newsworthiness we've talked about before, so I don't want to say it too much, but one thing that they have put in is, does the proposal description suggest any intriguing findings, and might the material affect the public at large? So AAAS really sees its role as bridging between the public at large and the scientific communities, scientific, technological, and engineering communities. So they really make this an outreach activity. And for example, they have Family Day on Saturday, where they have open sessions for people to come with kids, and a lot of activities are specifically directed toward kids and engaging the public at large. And I've seen a lot of people there at the meetings in the scientific sessions who are perhaps not members of AAAS. They are people that find it interesting. They've seen news reports coming out of the meetings in the past. It's at their hometown, and they're wandering through looking for interesting things. So make sure that you also take that into account.
I've been to a couple ones, and the one in San Francisco was amazing for the kids.
Yes.
And the one in, I think it was Texas, wasn't good at all.
Oh, that's interesting. So this past year in Seattle, they actually had Family Day off-site, which I thought was strange. And LJ and I had asked them about that.
Where did they do it?
They did it, I don't know where they did it, but it was, I didn't see it in the convention center.
Did they do it at Packside? Did they do it at the Science Center?
I'm not sure where they
Makes
did
some
it.
sense.
But they said that
You can think about that for us, potentially, because the proximity to the Science Center from the convention center is so close.
and we're having, yes, and we're having that discussion for how we link up. They're going to do a site visit here. We can talk about that more, but I'd like your input on it. But they felt that these sessions are just more appropriate. I mean, you don't have to be targeting your session to kids, I guess is my point. It is, you do want the synopsis to be without jargon. That is important. And that's just because it's multidisciplinary. It's not because it's not about science. So
the
there's a
NISDET
fine
folks
line.
have done big things at AAAS before. I think we did San Jose, one of the last big show after Family Day. But so, I mean, we have the capacity to put on quite a thing.
And we
the
may
sort of
be talking
informal
about,
science ed.
right, and we may be talking, we will be talking, it's nodding at me, we will be talking about other kinds of ancillary activities that will help develop. And those are really important for us too. For the university, it just fits with us. So the content we've also talked about, it does, the synopsis again is very critical. If you're thinking about putting together a proposal, I would start right now with that. Just thinking about it, have time to percolate, but leave sufficient time to reach out to potential panelists. You do need to ensure, we talked about this, that the participants are qualified to speak authoritatively on their topic based on their research and speaking experience. So assume that the reviewers looking at your proposal, and the reviewers are not AAAS initially, it's farmed out to people who are volunteers and have offered to review. And we would like people to volunteer to review. The request for volunteers will come out in April. The review period is 3 weeks in May. I think it's the 2nd to the 4th week in May. You can put a limit on the number of proposals you'll review. It is pretty intensive. And you will be ranking all the proposals that you get against each other. So it really is a head-to-head competition. But you will frequently find that reviewers know the panelists that you've identified. And if not, they will be looking them up. So that is really important. And I emphasize this for many purposes, not just for AAAS. Please update your online profiles because they will be Googling you if they don't know you. And even if they do, and you don't want to have them be outdated in terms of your research experience and publications. Please do that. And in the ASU system, whatever comes up first when someone Googles you, please update it. I speak as someone who is in Washington putting together various kinds of materials where I will put a link to a person's name in a meeting request with a federal research sponsor. And I look at those online profiles and am aghast at people putting in things that are totally not related to what they're doing today. So I have
Also,
that.
ASU probably has 4 different profiles for every person, and
Right.
some of
They're
them were last
inconsistent.
updated by FAR in 2006, so.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
and yeah, iSearch is currently crashed and has been for about 4 or 5 days.
Yeah,
And
right.
so, yeah,
Yes.
So maybe you could just bring that up to somebody in charge, Rachel, get all that fixed for us, and then we'd be happy to make sure everything's
Again,
updated.
yes, of course I will do that. I will do that. But I have it bold in caps, please do that. But what AAAS is also looking for is to make sure that these are effective communicators that you have. So that will do a lot toward your evaluation of your session after the fact, for those people that hand in evaluations of sessions after the fact. I'm very guilty of not doing that, but it is important. We talked about gender and ethnic diversity and all the different elements, geographic diversity. So one example that we could give that I think is relevant to topics for us could be Native American communities in Arizona teamed up with Native American communities in the Pacific Northwest. People look to us for unique characteristics that we have in our state and for your proposal, but keeping in mind that you need to have diversity amongst your panelists. Think about other locations, people where they also share that particularly, I guess, if it's shared, it's maybe not so unique, but where there are shared challenges, issues, interests, areas of expertise, familiarity, and think about that as a way to put together a unique proposal.
How many proposals do you reckon that ASU or submissions can succeed from ASU?
So they haven't told us. We would like to know the denominator, how many proposals they actually get. I don't know. I do know that it's very competitive, and I know many people who did not get their proposals accepted, but I can't tell you the answer to that. We do know that in doing a quick review of the speakers who were at the Seattle meeting, that the University of Washington had 33 speakers. That is our number to beat. 33
How many
speakers.
days?
How many what?
How many speakers did ASU have?
Don't know.
In Seattle.
That's a good question. We should know that.
It
We don't know that.
It could have been
We
close
will
to that
find
already.
that Yeah, it's very possible.
typically is.
It is possible.
Yeah, that-
I mean, I couldn't walk around without seeing somebody from
Right.
here.
Right, bumping into people. I think, yes, we will find that out. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so here is, topics of regional interest, because we've started that. Water. It was, talking earlier, we were able to get signs put on, we were kindly granted the opportunity to have signs on all the water coolers in the Seattle Convention Center. Had a sign that said, sponsored by Arizona State University, which was a freebie that we got by accident, but very topical. Everybody would expect that from Arizona, we're going to get topics like you did that involve water. Self-driving cars, anything that you can think about where we have notable achievements, things that are on the horizon that we might be able to announce, that would be great, or things that will be announced during this coming year or very close to the meeting date, where we'll think about sort of a discussion of the implications of those events in a broad way that will sort of take it further to make it get a bump on the newsworthiness, I guess, the mentions of it. So we obviously we always want to be in the news. We want to have attention given to our achievements, and AAAS is a way to get kind of a secondary look at some of the things that we've done. So we're reaching out to labs that are working on projects that are likely to have some interesting outcomes during this year, and ways that we can analyze that from a more societal impact perspective. Another, I mentioned the Native Americans. We'll be reaching out to the Global Dryland Center, to Oswaldo Sala, for hopefully he will put together a proposal or someone in his center. So we have a number of different possible opportunities that we can present. So I mentioned the role of sections at AAAS and their opportunity for sponsorship. What is even more important in terms of getting a proposal accepted is consultation with the sections. This was, don't laugh. It's very important.
I laugh because, okay, as an early career researcher at ASU, one of my first experiences with AAAS was preparing a session proposal and had been given the exact advice, consultation with section chair. So I looked up the section chair and just dialed through from the section chair list contact information.
Yes.
And okay, I'm going to talk to this person who's the name, dial it up, phone picks up. Office of the President, Georgia Tech. I was like, oh, Jesus, because the president of Georgia Tech was the section chair. And I was like, wait, hold on, back up. I need to prepare for this phone call.
No, you do, yes, exactly. So that's perfect for, yes, you might get the president of Georgia Tech,
Right.
or Harvard, or whoever.
Right, exactly.
But you
look
can,
who the section chair is before you phone call.
and say, I'm calling you because of your role as section chair.
Right, exactly.
You can call the section secretary. That's it. I mean, if you would like to start there. The section secretary actually runs the section, and the leadership would be the chair of the section. I have chaired Section X, the Societal Implications of Science and Technology. I will point out that was the big quadrant on that graph, but that it's very broad. It includes all the people that someone wants to have on their panel as the third speaker, talking about, okay, here we've heard these discoveries, or new advances or new possibilities in capability of science and technology and engineering. What does that mean to the public at large? Let's get a speaker from Section X and have them participate. So it's the section where everybody calls on them, and the section secretary is constantly getting requests to pay for travel of that particular person on the panel. But what you really want in order to put an extra plus on your proposal is to say, I have consulted with the leadership, and it could be the chair, it could be the secretary, it could be any member. Those are all listed on the AAAS website, and I can give people links to how you find those. You can, and it says section leadership, it's on the AAAS website. If you are not a member and you don't intend to become a member right away, you can get someone else to log in and show you where that is. But the section leadership is available in front of the paywall. You want to do that because it is something that will be checked off that you have consulted with. So that is included in the proposal. And you need to designate the 3 sections, at least, I mean, I would put in 3. If there's only 1, then put in 1. But the section that is most closely related to the topic of your proposal. And you want to do that because you want to socialize that to a section and make sure so that they know also and can give you advice. If there is an endorsed symposium that the section has already designated, they may give you useful information about how you make yours a little different. Maybe speakers, you can ask them for a suggestion of speakers from their membership. There are a number of ways that can be valuable. And it doesn't mean that necessarily that you've gotten the endorsement, but it is always useful to do that. And I found it very helpful, just in terms of having a discussion about whether one particular proposal is more meritorious, if you will, or interesting and diverse than another one. And the section secretary is the one in charge of the budget, and I'll be able to tell you whether there's even a possibility of travel funds. So that may tweak the direction that you're going to take in your proposal. So I think we're getting close to where I want to wrap up. I'll just give you some of the logistics. One more thing about.
One other question about paying for travel.
Yes.
Say the section won't pay, would ASU pay?
So if it's, I can't speak for your department, but I think if you say that you're on a proposal that's already been accepted, then I think there's a good chance. Our leadership has said that we want to make sure that we have a very good representation, but the meeting's in Phoenix.
Yes.
So for ASU people,
Yes,
that's not a serious.
We need to have someone from outside, from another institution.
I don't think we would pay for someone
You
from an
wouldn't,
outside
okay.
institution. AAAS though is going to look at who's going to pay for travel because they're a little concerned about conflicts of interest. So you do not want, I would say, it's an organization that has a particular financial conflict with possibly with AAAS. So pharmaceutical companies pay for their employees, so that's not the issue. I think there are other concerns that they have. So if that is a question, then we will look into it further. So I mentioned that the deadline is April 16th. If you would like internal review, we're going to set an internal deadline for that. It's probably a month or 3 weeks out. Again, making sure that you've got firm commitments from your speakers. The accepted proposals will be notified in
That's in 2 weeks,
April 16th.
3 weeks out.
Is in 2 weeks.
3 weeks before the April
Yeah, you're right.
16th deadline, or
Move fast, people.
This is a short deadline. It's a short deadline. Start time, yes.
Work your reviewers, shorten that up.
Okay. I might be able to do that. Proposals that are accepted will be notified in July. Advanced meeting and hotel registration will open in August. I always tell people to register. So there are hotels with reduced rates for people in Arizona. We don't have to worry about that. But for your speakers, the hotels fill up very, very quickly that are on the designated list that AAAS has. It's about 8 or 9 hotels. We don't have enough hotel space in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, as far as I'm concerned. And so the reduced rate that block goes very, very quickly. I always register in the first 10 minutes that portal opens. And that's how you get to the hotel, the meeting hotel rates. So the blocks. So that's the only way you can get to them. So tell your speakers, register immediately to make sure that they can get those rates unless you're willing to put them up on your couch. So think about that in advance. I want to encourage everybody to join AAAS if you haven't already joined and designate sections that you want to be affiliated with. You can affiliate with 3, up to 3. And if you think in advance that this is something that's going to help you, designate the sections that are relevant to your proposal. We have a list of all the section officers from ASU. And so if you want to talk to someone who is nearby about what your proposal is involved with, those are people who are likely to have put in proposals or reviewed them themselves, so they can give you good advice. And I would probably go to that list to help determine who would be good reviewers if we can't do it here at KED. And I think those are my points. So just because we have another minute, do we have more questions online?
Submit your questions.
Okay, submit questions. This is recorded so we can pass it along to other people that weren't able to participate. We heard from a number of people who couldn't come physically or watch online right now, so we'll make it available. If you are a member of AAAS, there's something called member community, used to be called Trellis. It is a way to socialize your symposium. You can use community to propose joint sessions. So you can be sponsored by multiple sections that is very helpful, that it shows how interdisciplinary you are. And so if you put on not just that you consulted with one section, but more than one section, I think it's helpful in your review. The portal for e-posters, we have a poster presenter here, opens July 16th. And I encourage you to tell people in your groups to submit posters. Was that an interesting experience when you had?
Yeah, it was a fun one. It was like a competition in essence too. So there was a nice way of you got to see what everyone else in your group is kind of doing, and it wasn't terribly rigorous in terms of submitting posters. I didn't think, at least.
Great.
I will say, I think ASU has won maybe 4 out of the last 6 top poster awards in a couple categories. So
Well, we want to get 6 out of 6,
Yeah.
or we for this year. So we will
So
be talking.
we've dominated the social science
Yes.
poster category
Okay.
from
Yeah.
ASU. So that's been our major.
Is this you channeling your inner crow there? 6 out of 6, only perfection will do. We need 7 out of 6 winners.
Absolutely. And we will also have a booth.
And buses.
Yes. So we
Yeah,
will.
right. If we lose this innovation thing, we should probably record how many times we've won AAAS so we can get that on the bus.
There will be a wrapped bus somewhere. So we want to have a dominant presence. We will have a booth in the exhibition hall. I can't say if it's the biggest one ever, but we will have a booth. We will maybe reaching out to people to be present in the booth. Posters, presentations. We have some cool ideas for what we would like to put in a booth, but LJ and I can't man the booth the whole time, so we'll have to get some help with that.
And then
But
lots
be
of
thinking about that.
presentations.
Yes, people presenting. There are other opportunities for participation in the meeting, and we'll be calling on people to do that. So don't be surprised if you, just by being in the room or being online, if we reach out to you. And if you have people that you think would be really good for doing that, let us know, and we'll reach out to them.
One other question. Is there any opportunity for people before they write up these proposals to run ideas past, like you or someone else?
Well, I think it would be
Or not.
helpful to do the synopsis first as a draft,
Okay.
and to have something to bounce off of. And
That almost seems more useful than a full review.
just the synopsis.
Yeah, the synopsis review.
Is that what you're suggesting we should do?
I'm bringing it up as a topic of conversation, and I may choose to suggest.
I think having also to say, here's the synopsis, and then here are the 3 topics that support it, that I think would be, that you think as the proposer, you think would be helpful, and looking for panelists who fill those 3 slots. And so if you reach out to a prospective panelist and say, I think you would be good at talking to this point, and that person may choose to refine it, may leave that open to them, but say these are the topics that we think would be interesting under this particular overarching topic.
Yeah, but I think for folks that haven't done this before, just the process of socializing the idea might be as useful as an actual post.
Yes, I mean, I
Development review.
personally have
Yeah.
got, a thought, and it can go in slightly different directions. And I want to know which is the best one to push
Well,
forward.
that's perfectly legitimate, and to have, say, a paragraph and say, it could go this way or could go that way, what do you think?
Or why don't you
That
just
would
have
be
like office hours?
To
Yeah, get
office hours,
a couple people together that know this process and have office hours.
that's a good idea. And we could do online
Zoom
office
in,
hours.
yeah, just zoom in and
Right.
say.
Oh, that's
Right. That is, and I'd be
I'm now
really
suggesting that.
delighted. to-
Okay. And we'll put it on all of Ira's free time.
I'm not the right guy. It can't be me.
We are really fortunate in our presence at AAAS to have enough. So we had 7 fellows elected this year.
Yeah.
We've got great presence as it is, and as you said, we kept bumping into people who may or may not be members of AAAS, but we're perfect for presenting.
So my unscientific analysis of this year's program had 23 ASU people with speaking roles.
We got
So, and that's,
But that's insane.
that was in
That's
Seattle, right?
1,800 miles away.
Okay, fair enough. And other people, I didn't present. I'm walking around, and So I'm not on your list. You said 23?
23 was speaking. So I was discussing, you were a poster presenter.
Was that? Do I,
Yeah, you counted in my list. Yeah.
Great. I'll take it.
Okay, good. So are we,
So that's it. The recording will be sent out to everybody that registered for it, and we'll also kind of send it back out to the entire list. It will include the slides and any pertinent follow-up information, like whether we're having this office hours. I love that idea. So we definitely will give you some more information in that follow-up email.
great. I forgot to do the fun ribbons, but that's okay.
Too late.
All right.
Well, for the
We're
people
still
in the
here.
room, it's not recording anymore, right?
It is, yeah.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay. So while we have another minute just for fun, as part of the registration, obviously you get a badge. The lanyards that you see up there are everybody who registers gets one of those. And then they have little ribbons that you can stick on your badge, and you get to choose. I think 10 of them. There's a competition for getting a ribbon, for developing a ribbon. And so the two that I picked up were part of the solution or precipitate. That was the one I put on my badge. And that I really loved was the much feared reviewer number 3.
Reviewer number 3.
Yes. And so they will have a competition. It hasn't been announced yet, but if you have like what you think is a really funny idea, it's very short. And you can get one. See if you can get one of those. It doesn't say ASU. I happen to have picked ones that were burgundy and gold, but I mean that just happened by accident. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you, LJ.
Yeah.
What was your